I spent 34 years of my life walking into rooms where the worst of humanity had left their mark. As a forensic analyst for the FBI, I specialized in crime scene reconstruction and evidence recovery. My entire world was built on cold, hard facts. I dealt in the tangible, blood spatter, trace fibers, encrypted hard drives. I didn't believe in the supernatural. I believed in the physical world and the evidence it held. But 3 nights before my retirement, my late brother Tommy came to me in a dream, and it shattered everything I thought I knew. Tommy died 5 years ago. The official report called it a freak accident. He was fishing alone on Lake Superior. The medical examiner concluded his heart had simply given out. I remembered the unnatural pallor of his skin, the stiffness of his limbs, and the way his hands were still locked in a death grip on his fishing rod when they pulled him from the icy water. I accepted the medical examiner's findings because at the time, there was no reason not to. The dream, however, didn't feel like a memory. It was sharp and visceral. In the dream, I was standing on a weathered wooden dock. Tommy stood at the end, wearing the red flannel shirt he died in. He turned around slowly. His face was pale, his eyes frantic. "Bobby," he said, his voice echoed right inside my skull. "Don't go on that trip. The rod's not right. Check the rod, Bobby, check the rod." He pointed down into the dark, churning water. Against my will, I looked down. It wasn't Tommy's reflection staring back at me. It was my own face, older, grayer, and dead. My skin was blue, my lips parted in a silent scream. I woke up with a violent gasp, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was drenched in a cold sweat. Beside me, the bed was empty. It was 5:30 a.m. My wife, Linda, was already awake. We had been married for 38 years. She had been the perfect bureau spouse. She hosted dinners, smiled at the right people, and never complained when I missed birthdays because of a case. I thought our foundation was unshakable. I walked downstairs. Linda was in the kitchen, dressed in expensive workout gear. Over the last 6 months, she had become obsessed with fitness. She had hired a personal trainer named Jason, lost 30 pounds, and revamped her wardrobe. I had chalked it up to a late-life crisis. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, handing me black coffee. "Big day today, your last official day as a badge-carrying federal agent. How does it feel?" "Surreal," I mumbled. The dream was still clinging to me. "Tonight is all about celebrating you," she said, her expression shifting into sympathetic concern. She had planned a massive retirement party for me at the local VFW hall. She had even insisted that I needed a solo vacation immediately afterward, booking a week-long fishing trip in the Boundary Waters for me to decompress. "I have a surprise for you," she said, her eyes gleaming with a sharp, brittle edge. She pulled a long, sleek black canvas case from the closet and laid it on the island. "I know you need new gear for the Boundary Waters. I had this custom-made by an artisan in Montana." She unzipped the case, revealing a masterpiece of modern engineering. The blank was deep, iridescent midnight blue carbon fiber. The reel was machined from aircraft-grade aluminum. My name was engraved on a brass plate, Robert Matthews. Fair winds and tight lines. "Linda, this is incredible," I said. "But it's too much. This must have cost a fortune." "You deserve it," she said, placing a hand on my chest. "You've worked so hard for us, Bob. I want you to have the best." I picked up the rod. The cork handle was smooth. But the moment my hand closed around the metal reel housing, something happened. It was faint, so faint a normal person would miss it. But I wasn't normal. There was a hum. It was an electrical hum. A high-frequency resonance vibrating through the cold metal of the reel seat. It felt like holding a live wire wrapped in thick rubber. A sudden freezing jolt shot up my arm. "Check the rod." Tommy's voice echoed in my head. I stared down at the expensive equipment. It didn't feel like a retirement gift. It felt like a threat. "Do you like it?" Linda asked, watching me too intently. "I love it," I lied. My voice was steady. "It's perfect, thank you." The rest of the day was a blur of paperwork and handshakes. That evening, the VFW hall was packed with over 200 people. Our son, Marcus, had flown in with his wife and my 2 granddaughters. Linda worked the room with the grace of a seasoned politician. 38 years and she still looks at you like that, my old partner, Mike, said. "You hit the jackpot, Bob." "Yeah," I murmured, watching Linda from across the room. She was talking to Jason, her personal trainer. He was heavily muscled and oozed a manufactured, predatory confidence. Jason leaned in when she spoke, his eyes dropping to her neckline. Linda laughed, reaching out to touch his forearm. Jason looked up and locked eyes with me. Instead of looking embarrassed, he offered a slow, insolent smirk. He raised his glass to me in a mock toast. A cold, methodical fury began to crystallize in my gut. I didn't believe in coincidences. I didn't believe in sudden, massive life insurance policy increases, which I remembered signing 6 months ago. I didn't believe in personal trainers who smirked at husbands. And I didn't believe in custom fishing rods that hummed with electricity. When we got home, Linda went straight to bed. I took the black canvas case and headed down to my basement workshop. I turned on the high-intensity overhead surgical lights and locked the heavy wooden door behind me. It was time to find out exactly what my wife had built for me. My basement workshop was my sanctuary. For decades, I had restored antique furniture down here, finding peace in the methodical process. Tonight, the workshop was going back to its roots. It was becoming a forensic laboratory. I clamped the fishing rod gently into my padded vise and pulled a high-powered, magnifying loupe over my right eye. At first glance, the craftsmanship was impeccable, but my fingers remembered the hum. I started with the reel. It was a bait-casting model, heavy and complex. The inner housing looked standard, but it felt wrong. It was too dense. The balance was off by perhaps 1.5 ounces. I retrieved my precision torque screwdrivers. Working with the deliberate movements of a bomb technician, I dismantled the side plate. With a soft click, it pulled away. I leaned in, peering through the loop, my breath hitched in my throat. Tucked flawlessly into the hollow cavity of the machined aluminum housing was a custom-built, miniaturized electrical circuit. It was a masterpiece of lethal engineering. There was a flat, high-density lithium polymer battery pack next to a modified, cylindrical capacitor, heavily insulated with heat-shrink tubing. 2 hair-thin copper wires ran from the capacitor into a pre-drilled channel in the carbon fiber blank. I grabbed my digital multimeter, set the dial to test for direct current, and touched the probes to the output terminals. The digital readout flashed, stabilizing at a terrifying number. 220 volts DC. It was a stun gun, miniaturized and weaponized. In dry conditions, it would cause severe burns, but I was going to be in a metal canoe on Lake Superior with wet hands. A shock of that magnitude wouldn't leave obvious burn marks. It would cause instant ventricular fibrillation. My heart would simply stop, and I would drown. It would look exactly like a sudden heart attack. Just like Tommy, a wave of nausea washed over me. I grabbed the edge of the workbench, fighting down the bile. The image of Tommy's pale face burned behind my eyelids. I needed to find the trigger mechanism. I traced the microwires down the blank toward the cork handle. Near the bottom edge, disguised brilliantly as a decorative brass end cap, I found a pressure switch. It required a firm, continuous grip to activate the exact grip used when setting a hook on a heavy fish. The moment a fish struck and I clamped down, the circuit would complete, dumping 220 volts directly into my palms. It was foolproof, untraceable, brilliant, and my wife couldn't have built it in 1,000,000 years. I reassembled the reel with surgical precision and wiped down the housing. I walked over to my encrypted, standalone laptop in the corner. If Linda was planning to murder me, she needed a motive. In my experience, spousal murder boils down to passion or profit. I started with the money. I downloaded our raw banking transaction data. Everything looked normal until I examined the Elite Fitness Solutions charges. The amounts were wildly inconsistent. $850 week, $200 another, then 3D, 500 watts. These weren't fitness classes. They were cash funneling operations to Jason. But a few $1,000s wasn't enough to kill a federal agent. I logged into our digital safe deposit box and pulled up my life insurance policy. We had taken it out 20 years ago for $200,000. The policy had been modified 6 months ago, the exact time she started training with Jason and suggesting the Boundary Waters trip. The new benefit amount was $2. I zoomed in on the digital signature. Forensic handwriting analysis was my specialty. I saw the hesitation marks, the slight tremor, the unnatural perfection. It was a highly practiced forgery. She had been copying my signature onto Christmas cards for decades. Profit and passion, she had both. I booted up a brute force password cracker, targeting her personal email account. Her password was her mother's maiden name and our anniversary year. It cracked in under 40 seconds. I bypassed the inbox and went straight for the deleted items folder. It was a goldmine of betrayal. There were dozens of emails back and forth with Jason Corderero. They exchanged explicit photos, detailing their hotel rendezvous. They talked about the future. Once the old man is out of the picture, Jason wrote, "We'll have everything we need. 2 million is enough to disappear to Costa Rica." "I know, baby," Linda replied. "Just a few more months. Let him have his little retirement party, then we're free." I shoved the pain into a dark corner of my mind and focused on the evidence. I needed to know who built the weapon. Jason was a meathead con artist. I found an email thread from 4 weeks ago with the subject, "The equipment." It was from Linda to Calvin Pritchard, an independent electrician who rewired our kitchen last spring. "Cal, the device needs to be flawless," Linda wrote. "It has to look like a natural cardiac event in the water." Cal's reply sent a fresh spike of ice through my veins. "Relax, Linda, it's ready. Pushing 220 VDC, more than enough to trigger instant VFib when he's wet. Just make sure he takes the rod. The trigger is in the cork handle." At the bottom of Cal's email was a postscript that stopped my heart. "And don't worry, it's the exact same schematic I used for the one you had me build for Tommy 5 years ago. Worked perfectly then, didn't it? Just make sure my cut of the 2 million is ready." Tommy, she hadn't just murdered my brother. She had used him as a beta test to see if the medical examiners would miss the electrical burns. Tommy was an easy target, a divorced, lonely man who trusted his sister-in-law. I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward onto the concrete. The rage roared in my ears. I wanted to march upstairs, drag her out of bed, and demand to know how she could look me in the eye for 5 years. But rage was a liability. It would allow Jason and Cal to scatter. I visualized a heavy steel door slamming shut over my emotions. I wasn't a heartbroken husband anymore. I was a federal agent hunting a cell of killers. I spent the next 3 hours methodically documenting everything. I took high-resolution macro photographs of the rod's components. I exported the deleted emails with full metadata headers. I pulled the forged insurance documents and bank logs, saving everything onto encrypted flash drives. I pulled up Tommy's autopsy report from the FBI database. Cardiac arrhythmia, trace localized epidermal discoloration on the palms, attributed to postmortem lividity. They hadn't missed the burns. They had misidentified them. Linda had conveniently donated his fishing gear a week after the funeral. The evidence was long gone, but I had the new weapon. I had the emails. I had the confession in writing. It was 4 a.m. when I shut down the laptop. I zipped the fishing rod back into its case, walked upstairs, and stood in the doorway of our bedroom. Linda was asleep, looking peaceful and innocent. She was a monster waiting for me to die. She thought she was playing a clueless old man, but she made a fatal mistake. She forgot what I did for a living. I didn't just analyze crime scenes. I built airtight cages for the people who created them. And Linda, Jason, and Cal had just walked right into mine. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I played the role of the oblivious, happy retiree to perfection. I had spent 34 years interviewing pathological liars and sociopaths. I knew how to mirror emotions, project false comfort, and hide intent behind geniality. Linda thought she was pulling the strings, but she was playing checkers against a grandmaster in a game that had already ended. I spent my mornings packing gear, cheerfully humming in the garage. I made a point to practice casting with the new rod in our backyard while she watched from the kitchen window. "This balance is incredible, honey," I shouted, executing a flawless roll cast. "It's the best rod I've ever held. I'm so glad you love it, Bob." She called back, her voice sickly sweet. "Just be careful out there. The boundary waters can be so isolated. Don't worry about me." I smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach my eyes. I know exactly what I'm doing. While she was at her training sessions, I utilized the ghost network I had built over 3 decades in the Bureau. A few encrypted messages to old colleagues, and I had the complete dossiers on Jason Corderero and Calvin Pritchard. Jason was a 34-year-old grifter, with a history of draining wealthy older women's settlements before vanishing. He had finally graduated to murder for a bigger payday. Calvin was a 52-year-old master electrician with gambling debts and a previous investigation for insurance fraud related to an arson fire. I had the players, the motive, and the weapon. Now, I needed the trap. Handing the evidence to the local police wasn't enough. Linda would lawyer up, claim the rod was a genuine gift, and create reasonable doubt. I wanted them caught red-handed. The night before my departure, Linda made my favorite pot roast. We sat at the dining room table, a scene of perfect suburban bliss built on rot. She poured expensive Cabernet. "To a long, happy retirement," she said, raising her glass. Her eyes shimmered with manufactured affection. "To getting exactly what we deserve," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. I pretended to sip the wine, silently spitting it back into my water glass, when she turned her back. I wasn't taking any chances of being sedated. "I'm really going to miss you this week," she said, laying her hand over mine. "Why don't you have Jason come over?" I suggested casually. "You could get a workout in while I'm gone." Her pupils dilated. A micro-expression of panic flared. "Oh, Bob, I couldn't. It's no bother," I insisted smoothly. "In fact, why don't the two of you drive up on the last day of my trip? There's a beautiful lodge near my access point. You could surprise me. I'd love to finally meet the guy who got you in such great shape." I could see the dark calculus forming behind her eyes. She was running the timeline. By day 6, I would already be dead in the water. The grieving widow arriving to surprise her husband would be the perfect alibi. "That's a really sweet idea, honey," she said softly, offering the smile of a predator watching prey walk into a snare. "Let me check with Jason." Later that night, while Linda slept, I pulled a burner phone from my safe and dialed my old partner, Mike's secure line. I had given Mike a duplicate set of the flash drives the day prior. "The plan is in motion," I told him. "I'm leaving tomorrow morning, but I'm going to the Henderson Lake House, not the Boundary Waters." The Henderson cabin was an off-the-grid property owned by an old bureau contact. It had no neighbors and only one dirt road in or out. "Wait until day 3, I instructed Mike. "Then, call Calvin Pritchard from an untraceable number. Tell him you're a friend of Linda's. Tell him she's panicked and worried the capacitor won't trigger in the extreme cold water. Give him the address to the Henderson cabin. Tell him he needs to manually inspect the device while I'm out, on the boat, or the deal is off." "Bob, you're luring a killer to an isolated cabin," Mike warned. "He won't bring backup," I said. "Cal is greedy and paranoid. He built it, and he wants his cut of the $2 million. Just have a tactical team on standby near the access road." The next morning, I loaded my truck. Linda stood in the driveway in her white bathrobe, waving, "Catch a big one for me," she called out. I looked at her, searching for any hint of regret. There was nothing but cold anticipation, hidden behind a bright smile. "I will," I promised. I pulled out of the driveway and didn't look back. I drove for 4 hours, taking a convoluted route to shake any tails, before turning onto the dirt road leading to the Henderson cabin. I spent the first evening rigging the property with high-definition, motion-activated security cameras, feeding the live feeds to a command center on the dining table. For 2 days I sat in silence, watching the monitors. I called Linda each evening, telling her the fishing at the Boundary Waters was incredible. Jason said he'd love to come up to the lodge on Friday. She cooed over the static. "We're going to drive up together." On the morning of day 4, the trap snapped shut. A beat-up white panel van appeared on camera 3, grinding down the access road. Calvin Pritchard had arrived. He parked near the tree line, checked his surroundings nervously, and pulled out a heavy red toolbox. Assuming I was out on the lake, he headed straight for the dock to tamper with my gear. I slipped my compact Glock 19 into the holster at the small of my back, walked out the back door, and moved silently through the brush to flank him. He set the toolbox down, peering out across the empty lake looking for my canoe. "Looking for me, Cal?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silent air. He violently flinched, spinning around, his face drained of color when he saw me standing at the edge of the dock, blocking his exit. "Oh, hey," he stammered, his eyes darting frantically. "I think I'm lost, supposed to do some electrical work at the Henderson place." "This is the Henderson place," I said softly, taking a slow step forward. "But you're not here to fix the wiring. You're looking for Robert Matthews." The lie died in his throat. "Yeah, I was told to check on some equipment for him." "I am Robert Matthews," I said. I let the silence hang before delivering the killing blow. "And Linda sent you to check the fishing rod. She wanted to make sure the murder weapon you built for her was going to work. Pure terror washed over his face. He realized he wasn't dealing with a clueless retiree. He was dealing with the FBI. He made the fatal mistake of trying to run. He lunged forward, trying to shoulder past me. But he was out of shape and fueled by panic. I pivoted, grabbing his arm, applying a textbook joint lock, and drove my knee into the back of his thigh. Cal screamed as he hit the wooden dock face first. I planted my knee firmly between his shoulder blades and twisted his arm. "Federal agent," I snarled, the suppressed rage bleeding into my voice. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." I reached back with my free hand, pulled the burner phone, and hit speed dial. "Mike, I've got him. Bring the cage." Within 10 minutes, 3 black unmarked SUVs tore through the tree line and skidded to a halt near the cabin. Mike piled out, followed by 4 heavily armed agents. They moved with silent, terrifying efficiency. Mike jogged down to the dock, took one look at the whimpering electrician, and pulled a set of heavy steel cuffs from his belt. "Take him," I said, stepping back, "and get that toolbox. It's full of specialized electrical gear. Probable cause for the forensic sweep." The agents hauled Cal to his feet, reading him his rights. The fight had completely left him. He realized the walls were rapidly closing in. I rode back to the Minneapolis field office in the passenger seat of Mike's vehicle. Though I wasn't officially on the clock, 34 years of service meant the rules bent when I needed them to. I stood in the observation room behind the two-way glass, watching as Mike dismantled Calvin Pritchard. It didn't take long. Cal was a coward caught dead to rights. When Mike dropped the printed emails detailing the weapons schematics on the table, Cal broke. He sang like a canary. It was her idea. Cal sobbed, his face buried in his handcuffed hands. Linda approached me. She asked if I could build a stun gun that could be hidden. She said she'd pay me $300,000 from his $2 million policy. "What about the first rod, Cal?" Mike asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "The one you built 5 years ago." Cal froze. The color drained from his face entirely. He looked at the mirror, knowing I was standing on the other side. She wanted a test run," Cal whispered, trembling. "She said her brother-in-law, Tommy, was going fishing. She wanted to see if the medical examiners would catch the electrical burns. I built it into a standard spinning rod. It worked perfectly. They called it a heart attack." In the observation room, I closed my eyes and rested my forehead against the cool glass. Hearing the clinical, detached way he described murdering my brother as a test run was a physical blow. The rage flared again, a hot white fire in my chest. "I have everything we need," Mike said, stepping out of the interrogation room. He handed me the signed confession. He gave up Jason, too. The trainer was supposed to handle the insurance paperwork and launder the payout through offshore accounts. They had a flight booked for Costa Rica. "When?" I asked, my voice tight. "Day after tomorrow," Mike said. "But Linda and Jason are scheduled to fly into Duluth Regional Airport in about 4 hours to meet you at that lodge. They think they're walking into a tragedy. Let's give them one," I said. The coordination was flawless. I sat in the mobile command center, parked just off the tarmac at Duluth Airport. Heavily armed federal agents posing as baggage handlers, TSA agents, and civilian travelers were scattered throughout the terminal. I watched the live feed as Linda's flight landed. A few minutes later, she appeared in the terminal wearing designer sunglasses and a somber, dark outfit, playing the grieving widow, before the curtain even went up. Jason walked a few paces behind her, carrying a sleek leather duffel bag. He looked smug and completely oblivious to the crosshairs he had just walked into. "Hold positions," the tactical commander said over the radio. "Wait for the signal." I watched them walk past the baggage carousel toward the sliding glass doors leading to the rental car lot. They thought they had won. They thought they were hours away from $2 million. I grabbed a radio off the console. "Move in, take them down." The terminal exploded into calculated chaos. 6 agents converged on them simultaneously. Jason realized what was happening a fraction of a second before Linda did. He dropped the duffel bag and bolted toward the exit doors. He didn't make it 5 feet. A burly agent hit him with a textbook flying tackle, driving him hard into the polished tile floor. 3 more agents swarmed him, burying knees into his back and wrenching his arms behind him. Linda froze in pure shock. 2 female agents grabbed her arms, spinning her around and slamming her against a concrete pillar. The click of the handcuffs seemed to break her paralysis. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her designer sunglasses flying off her face. "Get your hands off me. I haven't done anything." "My husband is a federal agent. He'll have your badges for this." I stepped out of the mobile command center and walked through the sliding glass doors into the terminal. The crowd of onlookers had parted, creating a wide circle around the arrest scene. Linda's screaming stopped instantly. Her mouth fell open. She stared at me as if she were looking at a ghost. In a way, she was looking at the man she was absolutely certain was currently floating dead in Lake Superior. "Hello, Linda," I said, my voice eerily calm, echoing in the sudden silence. "Bob?" she gasped, her face turning a ghastly shade of gray. "Bob, what is happening? Why are they doing this to me?" Even now, caught in the jaws of the trap, she was trying to manipulate me. "They're arresting you for the murder of my brother, Tommy," I said loudly, ensuring everyone in the terminal heard. "And for the attempted murder of a federal agent. I don't know what you're talking about," she cried, fake tears instantly springing to her eyes. "Bob, please, you have to believe me. I love you. I checked the rod, Linda," I said, cutting through her hysterical act like a scalpel. The words hit her like a physical blow. The fake tears stopped, her jaw snapped shut. The innocent, confused wife vanished, replaced instantly by the cold, calculating sociopath I had married. Her eyes hardened, boring into me with pure, unadulterated hatred. "Cal gave you up," I continued, stepping closer so only she could hear the final details. "He confessed to everything, the capacitor, the trigger, the test run on Tommy. We have the emails. We have the bank transfers to Jason. And right now, my team is pulling a one-way ticket to Costa Rica out of Jason's bag, along with the forged insurance documents." The realization washed over her. It wasn't regret. It was the devastating realization that she had lost. That she was going to spend the rest of her life in a concrete box, stripped of her wealth and freedom. "You're a monster," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "You loved that damn job more than you ever loved me. You deserve to die out there, maybe," I said softly, "but you made one fatal mistake." "Linda," she glared at me, her chest heaving. "What?" "You forgot what I did for a living," I said, turning my back on her. "I don't just catch killers, I dissect them." I walked away as the agents hauled her, screaming and thrashing, toward the waiting vehicles. I didn't look back. The case was closed, but the real work, the work of living with the aftermath, was just beginning. The trial was a media spectacle that stretched over 8 grueling months. I sat in the front row of the gallery every single day, an immovable fixture of cold accountability. Linda's defense attorney fought viciously. He tried to paint me as an abusive, controlling husband who had driven his desperate wife to the brink. He tried to suppress the emails and argued that Cal had rigged the rod independently in an extortion plot. But the evidence I had meticulously gathered was a fortress they couldn't breach. The metadata on the emails held up. The forged insurance documents were undeniably linked to Linda's IP address. And the final crushing blow came when the new forensic analysis of Tommy's exhumed body revealed microscopic, undeniable evidence of high-voltage electrical trauma on his hands. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When the verdicts were read, I felt no joy, only the heavy, hollow satisfaction of a job finished. Jason Corderero received 25 years for conspiracy. Calvin Pritchard secured a 30-year sentence. Linda was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, sentenced to life in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole. The collateral damage, however, was immense. Our son, Marcus, refused to speak to me after the trial. He believed I had entrapped his mother. I didn't try to change his mind. Some truths are simply too horrific for a child to bear. My granddaughters are growing up thousands of miles away, believing their grandfather is a tyrant. I keep the crayon drawings they made for my retirement in a locked drawer. 6 months after the sentencing, I visited Linda in prison. I needed to hear it from her. I used my old bureau credentials to secure a private room. She walked in wearing a faded orange jumpsuit, her hair graying and unkempt. The vibrant, charming woman was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of resentment. We sat across from each other at a steel table, bolted to the floor. "Why did you come here, Bob?" she asked, her voice raspy. Come to gloat. I came for an answer, I said. How long were you planning to kill me? She stared at me, her eyes devoid of any recognizable human emotion. Since the day I realized you loved the Bureau more than you loved me, she said finally. 34 years, Bob. 34 years of coming in second to the job. You never chose me. So you murdered Tommy to practice? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Tommy was convenient, she stated flatly, devoid of remorse. He was lonely, he trusted me, and yes, I needed to know if it would work. I needed to know if I could live with it. And you could, turns out I could. She smiled, a small, terrifying smirk. We all have our retirement plans, Bob. Mine just didn't involve you breathing. I stood up. She wasn't a victim of neglect. She was a predator who had used my absence as a justification for her greed. Enjoy your retirement, Linda, I said, and walked out. I haven't been back since. I sold the house and the cabin. I live in a secure high-rise apartment in St. Paul now, consulting part-time on cold cases for the Bureau. The work keeps my mind sharp and keeps me moving forward. I'm good at finding monsters, and the world has an endless supply of them. Last week, on the 5th anniversary of Tommy's death, I went to the cemetery. I sat on the damp grass next to his headstone, holding a cup of terrible gas station coffee, his absolute favorite. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it, Tommy, I said aloud. I'm sorry she got away with it for 5 years, but I got her. She won't ever hurt anyone else. The wind picked up, rustling the heavy oak branches. For a brief moment, I swear I heard it, a deep, booming laugh, the kind of laugh Tommy let out when I finally figured out a puzzle he had solved hours ago. I smiled. The beautiful, lethal fishing rod sits in an evidence locker deep in the bowels of a federal courthouse. I leave it there as a necessary reminder. The most dangerous threats don't always come kicking down your door in the middle of the night. Sometimes they sleep next to you for 38 years. Sometimes they kiss you good morning while calculating the voltage required to stop your heart. If you ever find yourself holding a gift that feels just a little too perfect, a little too heavy, trust your instincts. Pay attention to the subtle hum beneath the surface. The people who love us, even the ones who have passed on, will always try to warn us. But it's up to us to listen. Always check the rod. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, investigation, and cold, calculated justice, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't let greed trap you, and always trust your instincts. See you in the next one.